because I'd never even dreamed in my wildest dreams that I would ever write a book. But after some gentle persuasion from Albert, I finally resigned myself to writing the manuscript for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And in this book, Albert revealed many what I would call startling revelations about life, death, the afterlife, and God. Many of which, or in fact most of which, flew in the face of what Christian holy men had been preaching for centuries. And all of these are set out in my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. So then my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit, describes my second set of encounters with my spirit guide, Albert. Only this time it was a different format. I woke up in my bed one night and I saw a ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but he was in astral form. And I said to Albert, "Hi Albert, nice to see you again. What brings you here this time?" And he said, "I'm here to take you on a series of astral trips, out-of-body adventures. I'm going to take you to the spirit side, to other places in the universe, to other places on your planet, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your second book." And he said, "I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. That therefore I'm going to take you places where you can actually see firsthand for yourself what I'm showing you, and then it'll be much easier for you to describe them in your second book." And so then he reached out and he grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and I could see my physical body still lying in bed. So then, with him holding my hand, we rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and we hovered above our beautiful planet for a few moments before he finally took me through a shimmering doorway that was floating in space to the spirit side. Once I stepped through the doorway, I was once again in the beautiful meadow I had encountered in my first set of trips with Albert. It was filled with lush green grass, tall, majestic trees, and wildflowers resplendent in 1,000 different colors. So many colors that we can't even imagine because we don't have them on Earth. It was an amazingly beautiful place. And I delighted in the perfume and the fragrance wafting up from the flowers in this meadow. And then Albert led me on a stone path towards a white city called Aglaia. Eventually we came to a very majestic building lined with pillars in the front, which Albert called the Hall of Wisdom. And there we entered a large chamber with a high domed ceiling. In the middle of the room was a table in the shape of a horseshoe, and seated behind it were 11 regal souls. They all had snow-white hair and smooth, unwrinkled skin. And I recalled from my first visit to the spirit side with Albert that this was the Council of Wise Ones. And they are a committee of very wise and advanced souls whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on Earth. The chair of the council, her name is Sophia, she spoke to me. She said that the council was not happy with the progress being made by humanity in terms of getting rid of their negative emotions, curtailing their violence and abuse, and learning to embrace love and compassion. She said that humans let their negative emotions rule too much of their lives. Things like fear, anger, hatred, greed, jealousy. And that results in a lot of violence and conflict on our planet. And she reminded me that it's important for humans to try to expand their consciousness, raise their vibrations, so they can ascend to Earth in a higher dimension, known to many as the New Earth. Sophia asked me to continue my astral trips with Albert so that I could write about what I saw and heard in my second book. And she hoped that if people could read what I saw in my trips with Albert, that might help many people find their way on the path to spiritual enlightenment. So anyway, my trips with Albert were very much in tune with and in fact orchestrated by the Council of Wise Ones. So we left the spirit side, and the first stop with Albert on this set was at an aquarium in California. And there I met up with an orca, or a killer whale, named Yolanda. We communicated by telepathy, and she told me that whales and dolphins are highly intelligent, sensitive, emotional creatures who only want to live in harmony with their planet and all the other creatures on the planet, including humans. And she was dismayed at the abuse that humans had been heaping on her kin over the centuries when they were killed by whaling ships, trapped in nets, imprisoned in water parks, and poisoned by our pollution. Yolanda had been born freely in the Pacific, where she was free to roam the oceans, and that had all come to an end when she was captured by humans and put into this aquarium, where she was forced to perform silly tricks for spectators who didn't seem to care about her plight. She desperately wanted to leave her concrete prison and go back to the Pacific, where she could frolic freely in the blue waters. And she implored me to send her message to my fellow humans that it was wrong to imprison these creatures in water parks and wrong to abuse them. And I was very happy to oblige and to describe my encounter with her in my third book. So even though the plight of whales on Earth is a very serious matter, every time I see a picture of a whale on TV, I can't help but be reminded of a funny story from my youth. It happened when I was in the first grade. Our teacher, Miss Prentice, was teaching the class about whales. And when she finished, she said to the class, "Does anyone have any questions?" So one little girl in our class put up her hand and said, "Do whales swallow people?" Miss Prentice said, "No, whales can't swallow people because they have throat pleats that filter out their food of plankton and krill." But the little girl persisted. She said, "But our Sunday school teacher said that Jonah was swallowed by a whale." Miss Prentice said, "No, whales cannot swallow people." The little girl kept on. She said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. When I get to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah if he was really swallowed by a whale." By now, the teacher was getting angry. She said, "What if Jonah went to hell?" Without missing a beat, the little girl said, "Well, in that case, you can ask him."